Well, thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you for the introduction. Apologies for being fashionably late. I think we should just get right into it.
Sure.
Okay, sounds good. So one thing we want to do before we just kind of setting the context a little bit, I like to do a little bit of a history lesson, for everybody here. Sometimes, today we think that this is an appendage and we don't leave home without it. We don't go anywhere without our phone. But just 10 years ago, the iPhone was a year old. Twitter was being used for the first time in presidential politics, which is quite interesting to think about today. And how have these sort of conveniences and experiences that we sort of take for granted today in our personal lives, how has that sort of ushered in a watershed for how we think about marketing as a profession and how that's changed?
Yeah, I think the lowest common denominator of all like marketing, right? Anyone who takes a class in marketing in high school or something is the 4 Ps, right? Product, price, promotion, place. But in the last 10 years, that fourth P, like place, has become this sort of metaphysical thing, right? That has just completely changed the role of marketing and the opportunities for marketers. So I'll give you 3 quick examples, kind of go back in time to just kind of see what I mean, because it is the way we make decisions and the tools that we use as people has just completely changed, right? So if you and I, 10 years ago, wanted to go up to Milwaukee for a business meeting and grab lunch along the way, the tools we would use would have been, like this artifact you've probably seen in movies called a map, right? And on that map, you actually have to know, where are we, right? Mm-hmm. Where do we want to go? And like kind of pick our route, like, minors in cartography and how to get there. And the tools we would use to figure out where we want to eat are like billboards, right? That was the place. Those were the tools. Today, we don't know. You have to know where we are. We don't have to know where we're going. We just have to know like the first 3 letters of where we're going, right? Google will finish it for us. They will tell them what we want to eat. We want to tell them where we want to get there. That's all we have to know. Like there is no place anymore. And in fact, we probably don't even go in a car because it's probably Uber or someone else to take us. 10 years ago, if we wanted to get in, if I wanted to get in good shape, I had to go to a gym. I had to talk to a trainer who would put me on a plan. I was like beholden to where these things happen. Now, my gym is on my wrist, right? My trainer is my 9-year-old who's also on the same program, who will give me a hard time if I don't do my 10,000 steps or whatever. My food comes through my phone that is recommended by what I want to eat and what my nutrition is, and it will alert me and give me ideas. It's not just consumer either, right? A lot of folks here, I probably assume, work in B2B type organizations. If your CEO or your boss wanted to understand what SEO was 10 years ago, they were beholden to what someone else thought it was in the place where they put it, right? They put it in a book with all this extraneous information. You had to get a consultant, you have to go to class. Now you can just get everything disaggregated. Anything you want to learn, the content can come through a podcast, through YouTube, through a blog post, through a simple little Twitter line, like anything. The whole place for which we consume information, the tools that we use and how we make it has just become completely disaggregated, which for marketing and marketing professionals has either been wildly destabilizing or exciting and opportunistic, depending on your perspective. But from an industry perspective, for 50 years, right, from 1950s of kind of the Madison Avenue days up until 10 years ago, all your business school curriculums, your university curriculums, your Fortune 1000 structures were all built around this concept that the place was static, right? And it was advertising and events, there was media platforms. Even when the web came along, marketers just looked at it as another place. Right? It's just another place. This is where we're going to go do our marketing, and it'll be an e-business channel or an e-commerce channel, and that's what all the skills were. But the reality is that place kind of turned on us when digital went native, and suddenly, the Twitter channel started, questioning the marketing as a customer service, issue, or the pricing promotion showed up in every place, and that metaphysical context really destabilized all the structures of marketing. And it just exploded skills, right? Just skills that people need to have, that I'm sure many of the people in this room have, very technical skills, deep customer insight skills, context skills, just completely changing the role that marketers have, which again, it depends on your perspective if that's good or bad, but it's happened, it's real. Like that, it is, context is now king, and the place is metaphysical.
Mm-hmm. So actually jumping off of that and thinking about place and the relationship to skill sets needed for marketers, organizational structures, because even B2C, B2B, I think we still see people who are, and maybe some of you in this room as well, who have become subject matter experts in a particular channel, whether it's social media, whether it's email automation, whatever that is. And so what you said insofar as a sort of continuum of experiences with our prospects and customers doesn't necessarily seem to be reflective of how we're organized. So just kind of, you could speak to that a little bit, or how we need to potentially transform the way we think about a marketing organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an evolving thing, right? And I think the key word that you used is skills, right? Skills are what matter. Skills are what matter to everyone in this room. Skills are what we're developing, and they're not just technology skills. They're not just channel skills. I mean, they are problem-solving, business decision-making skills. And what every one of these represents is a way to get in front of how customers are making decisions, right? How prospects are thinking, the tools that they're using, and understanding them. But the organizational designs, the technologies that we use are moving at such a fast pace that really what matters are the skills. And I think that some of these things kind of get in the way of it, right? I mean, it was, like we have here a digital team, it was an inbound team. Before that, it was a web team, right? Nobody wanted to, there used to be a time where like a webmaster was like a cool thing, and now it's not a cool thing, right? There was a time the org is evolving so fast. What really matters are those skills. And sometimes they're not just technical skills either. I mean, they're leadership skills, they're management skills, it's multifunctional skills. And I think, from how I think about it, how I think we should all think about it, are really, the leaders in marketing, the problem solvers, people who can really help get in front of solving customer problems in a way that maybe they haven't been relied upon to do before, but which we were all on the front lines and able to do now.
So getting a little bit more specific into that, let's say, again, today I sit in a role and I am responsible for all of our interactions with clients and prospects in social media, for example. How do I think about evolving my career, or where's the next horizon for me to think about? I'm not necessarily just deep in one particular channel, but now I have a little bit more visibility across marketing, or maybe it's an interaction with sales. Like, how do I think more tactically about growing my career out of a particular expertise today?
Yeah, and I think everyone needs to think of it in kind of along two lines, like of what is currently available and what should be available, right? Because I mean, I feel enlightened on the value of marketing, but I'm obviously subjective. Is what I see is not, like a social media manager, as I see someone who's a frontline customer marketer, right? And someone who builds those technology skills, those communication skills, the content creation. I mean, there's so much content creation now through channels at the place of interaction. It's incredible. You could find a healthy, dynamic career path from any one of these channels into general management, into sales, into design, into marketing management, into other elements of just traditional campaign marketing. There really doesn't seem like there's any limit to it, because marketing is kind of in everything now, right? I mean, you can even go work in finance because you become so quantitative, right? I mean, whoever thought math would be such an important part of marketing, but it's like, I mean, it's everything now, right? Is being able to quantify those interactions, roll it up to business impact. So to me, it seems from a career perspective, marketing is a great launch pad to do anything, right? They used to say that about sales too, right? At least if you understood how the customer buys and the decision-making operates, you could go do anything across the business. I think that's true for marketing. But I think kind of the other side of that is you have to be realistic that while if you've kind of embraced the idea of modern marketing, if you've gotten fluent on this broader set of skills that marketers have, that's still not a majority mindset, right? And every industry is different, but there's still lots of industries where it's like marketing's a function, do the events, do advertising. There's other ones where it's gotten really advanced in terms of strategy and content creation, like technology and media and some of these, but every industry is different. So the folks across the organization may not see it that way, but you gotta earn those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and talk a little bit more about that influence, right? Because I've worked places where the focus is all product or the focus is all sales, and to your point, marketing is seen as sort of a support function. So how, as somebody out here in the audience, maybe just in the middle of their career, how do they start thinking about driving more of that influence? I think I heard you mention data a little bit, so maybe if we could expand upon that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that surprises marketers oftentimes is how much more they know about things than maybe they're supposed to, right? Or more than folks understand, right? Do you understand? Like, we think of it in really granular terms, like click-through rates, and we've kind of abstracted away the real customer behavior into our own lexicon of A/B tests and what are the participation rates and what are the different digital metrics that drive our kind of fluency. But those are all customer behaviors that if you can quantify and translate through the language of math, through the common language of business, it should not be, it kind of opens up the opportunities for everyone. Because that's the fluency of business is the data, is the numbers, it's understanding it. And I think one thing I see marketers do way too much is just like get enamored with the data and the metrics rather than try to level it up a bit and help people understand it, right? So they can understand what the actual customer behavior is. Because if you can do that, then you can do anything, right? If you can explain how customers are making decisions, how they interact with your content, it's super valuable across the business versus going the other direction of, becoming enamored with the metrics, becoming enamored with the technology and the lexicon, which I think can be alienating to the rest of the organization.
And to what extent then do you feel like marketers should be responsible for contributing to revenue or having some more downstream connection? Yes, we have connection to our customers, but ultimately how those customers help grow our business. Do we have to have quotas? Should we have quotas? What does that accountability look like?
Yeah, I think we should have quotas, but I also think businesses are going to have to think in different ways anyway, right? I mean, like, we're in an era now where, when's the last time you were sold to and you bought something, right? Like, we don't sell things anymore because people buy things that they want, and we've reconstructed our world so that we have so many different filters and so many different ways that we make decisions. It's really hard to sell to people. But I think that, things like customer engagement, net promoter scores, share of budget or share of wallet are things that marketers do need to sign up for, because the future of marketing, and that we should, 100%, whether that manifests as quotas or manifests as kind of core business metrics, of course, because that's how businesses succeed and grow. But I think marketers need to think about it in terms of like what makes sense for customers, because it really is becoming an era where customers are just going to invest in brands. They're going to invest their time in trusted networks and content that they trust through their social networks, through they're the filters that they've defined for themselves. And marketers are the ones that have the visibility to it. So they have the responsibility, whether it's been given to them or you've decided to accept it or not, right? It's there.
Yeah. So on that point too, you raised an interesting question. I think a lot of times, the two sides of marketing are acquisition and retention, and sometimes those are a little bit more heavily weighted on the acquisition side, or kind of in our experience, we've seen that. But what you just described is more building engaging experiences all along that journey, even sort of post-sale or consumption or whatever it is. How should we be thinking about retention and customer loyalty in a different way, from either a brand perspective or even down to the executional level?
I think that's required.
Yeah.
Right? I think if you can always look at it in your own behavior. If someone, your friend on Facebook, right? If someone someone you work with uses something, you always, are more likely to go want to buy that thing, whether it's in business or consumer, it doesn't matter, right? Reference-based decision-making is kind of the new normal of this metaphysical place, right? Because you trust your network, you trust your brands, and so acquisition is going to comes through retention anyway, right? It's hard to go buy things. Nobody goes and looks at a product review anymore. They look at Amazon to see what other people have said. Right? They don't care what your copy is. So I think reference-based buying and acquisition almost become symbiotic in that regard. I imagine how we have to think about it.
And thinking along those ways too, I think we've heard the new buzzword. There are many buzzwords in marketing. We're really good at creating buzzwords in marketing, but around sort of influencer marketing. And to your point about, okay, I believe my friends, I trust others who are kind of in my network, however you're defining that. How should we maybe think differently, again, from a retention and acquisition perspective about getting involved with influencers in maybe a more authentic way, or is there something else there?
Yeah, I think influencer marketing has always been an important part of the mix, at least in especially with B2B and sort of, higher end consumer products or just anything that's thought or, kind of more thought leadership-y oriented or things like that, has always been important. It's just more important now, and it's something you can measure. So I think everyone should think about it because that's how we consume ourselves, right? We can see that it's happening. I don't know if it's just a specific discipline or something we all just have to do. Like it's just a part of it, right? I think that is something that we will see play out differently in each industry. But I do think the product starts to become sort of noise in a lot of the marketing. Like it's not the first thing. It's not it's still the thing. It's still super important, but it's like, just a pure product quality or product fit or something new changes very much if you don't have all these other building blocks of like who are the key influencers, who are the reference based ways that you go market things, where are you actually showing up at a point in time where people have the problem that you solve. Those sort of things become much more important.
Okay. And shifting gears a little bit, I think well, not necessarily all that much because we're talking about buzzwords still, but I hear a lot of people talk about scale. How do we get to scale? Or sometimes people talk about personalization at scale, especially relative to the technologies that we have available to us. I'm curious what that really means to you, and what opportunity do we have for developing sort of more meaningful conversations, but also allowing us to get to those broader business objectives that we might have.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things with scale and with personalization, right? So, in a couple aspects of scale, sometimes it's about not doing things, right? Sometimes it's about helping the rest of the organization even understand what personalization means, and then it's about focus. So, not doing things. We're enamored with our numbers right now in marketing and getting kind of the right ratios and focusing on things that delight or give us the better metrics. But it also tells us that for the most part, a lot of what we do in marketing is failing, right? You walk around Chicago today, and Steve Wendell, our head of behavioral sciences, will say this all the time. You'll see 5,000 ads, and maybe you'll notice one, which means 4,999 ads failed, right? And it doesn't mean that you actually converted, but the idea of digital marketing, the idea of personalization was not to follow everyone around the web with like retargeting ads and just kind of creeping them out, right? The idea was to get really personal, right? It was designed to build this system that helped us understand people's problems, like how they're making decisions, where they are, and it was designed to do that. But a lot of times that's going to mean not doing things. It's going to mean not just trying to do quantity over quality, and there's a discipline, I think, that's happening at scale where we're going to have to become just much more focused on core customers that we understand. Now, a challenge with doing that is that our peers across the business don't understand all of this either, right? They don't even understand technically what personalization is because they don't have the full visibility in the digital world, right? And the example I use, there's a Disney store downstairs, right? Like we can all go into that Disney store right now and have the exact same experience, but ideally, where Disney's going, or where how we operate in a digital world is, it's like if you and I walked into that store now, and we both have sons, but mine are older, right? Like if I walked in, what I would see in a digital world is a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff, right? And what you would walk in and see is a whole bunch of Mickey Mouse stuff, right? It's a totally different experience with the brand of Disney. That's personalization. On the web, that makes sense to everyone here, right? Because somehow we know something about us. But that is the buying experience. That's what personalization means, is like knowing exactly who I am and making every contextual moment relevant. That's still something at marketing level that is not fully grokked across the organization, right? Like that. So that's why we have a lot of, too many numbers, too much extraneous activity, trying to kind of get hyper-focused on performance rates rather than personalization, because we still have a lot of work to do across the enterprise to help people understand what's really going on with customer experience. But I think as we get there, you will see this idea of, if you've read the Kevin Kelly book, 12, it's called Inevitable, 12 Technologies That Are Changing the World. Really good book. He's speaking at our investment conference here in a couple weeks, and I'm a big fan. But there's a whole chapter in there called filtering, right? And it's kind of like the chapter for marketers in there about how, which is basically about mass consumerization, which is sort of this next big wave of marketing. Like the first one was in like the 1800s, where there was just marketing brought what was typically only available to the wealthy, to the masses, and it kind of transformed the world. Then midway through the 20th century, just mass communication one-to-many, and now it's a many-to-many type of phenomenon where with filtering, customers literally build walls around themselves. The place, they define the place themselves based on the brands they trust, the social networks that they interact with, the content they consume, and the products that they've bought historically. And those digital sort of filters that they put around themselves becomes how we scale, is knowing how to navigate those different technical, metaphysical places to get to people. And that's a pretty complicated thing, especially in the context of like we're still doing way too many things wrong, and most people don't understand what we're doing to say that we're going to get there. But that's why all the technology groups are so fascinated with it, because whoever gets there right, to that personalization and mass is going to be extremely successful, right?
Yeah. So I want to make sure we're staying on time and leaving some time for questions. Good. Okay, great. So if we could sort of tie this all up in a bow of all the things that we talked about scale, about technology, about changing skill sets, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about how we're structured here and what your vision is for the Morningstar marketing organization and then broader organization across the board?
Sure. I think so for context, I came to Morningstar 3.5 years ago as the first CMO. I had previously been in a bunch of technology firms before the one that Morningstar bought, largely to make marketing technology. So Adobe, Oracle. So I kind of switched sides from making the stuff that, and talking about how great it was to actually having to use it, which seemed like sweet justice. And the Morningstar marketing team was about 140 people at the time. And the founder here at the time kind of had said, well, we understand marketing is changing. I'd kind of done this whole thing at a startup that they'd acquired, and they're like, we want to do that here, right? We want to get in front of it. We want to future-proof. Morningstar is a very well-branded company. They want to future-proof for digital, for skills, for talent. And to be honest, organizational structure was the last thing on my mind, because the key thing for all marketing and for everyone in this room and for everyone at Morningstar is like, there's just a certain need of dynamic, rich skill set in marketing today. Leadership, right? The ability to think abstractly, the ability to problem solve across a broad range of business problems, and to communicate in patient, quantitative, technical, but traditional marketing sense. Like the whole role has changed so much. And I'd seen this when I was at Adobe across, at first it went through retail and went through the media and entertainment, and it went through consumer packaged goods and life sciences and retail banking, and it's still making its way through a lot of the more traditional regulated industries like ours. But so first off was just identifying people who could lead, right? People like Leslie, like yourself, people who can lead, who are dynamic, who have a general mindset capacity, who can problem solve across the organization, and getting behind the right people. Because, and we heard this yesterday, we had a great CEO in here doing a presentation for a group this size, talking about all that matters is getting the right people on the bus, right? Getting the right team on the bus and enfranchising folks, but then really building around their strengths. So when we reorganized ourselves around the experiences we anticipate customers have, right? So brand is about trust and communications, and it's about reputation and that authenticity, and product marketing is about the problems that people have and how do we solve them, and things like client marketing and that kind of traditional frontline types of things are around the place and where do we meet you, but there's also digital and behavioral and social and all these other things, so that we're meeting customers on their terms, but again, with enough flexibility, knowing it's all changing, right? It's all changing. I mean, we didn't at that point in time realize how much we had to invest organizationally in certain skills, right? Like Eloqua skills and Adobe skills and problem solving and frankly, conflict resolution skills, right? I mean, we went through a lot of training around that because, the organization itself was focused on, arguing, like, why aren't you just doing things the way you used to? And we're like, because the customers aren't. And so we can't. And that made a lot of interesting challenges, but organizationally, that's sort of what we did. And then the bigger challenges have been organizing outside of marketing, right? So that there's people you can actually work with and taking that mindset across so that people learn to interact in a different way and expect different things. And that's actually been a much bigger challenge, but also much more rewarding. I mean, Morningstar is very supportive of it. But, how do we get folks like yourself into business units as core decision makers and leaders in the group? And how do we set an expectation across the organization that marketing's up to something a little different and we got to support it? And that's been, again, that's a core part of it that I think a lot of times we forget as marketers. It's like we can go change ourselves and how we organize and what we do, but if the rest of the organization doesn't understand it and accept it and support it, like we're out of luck.
Great. Thank you. I think we'll open it up for questions. Trying to see if we have any questions in the audience. I believe that there are some mics on the side, so just raise your hand. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, if you have a question. I can keep talking.
I can't see anything.
Oh, we have one here. Great.
Hi, this is Lori from Viacom. And at the beginning of this discussion, you mentioned that every Monday Rob talks about 5 things in marketing you need to know this week. I'd love to know what this week's 5 things are.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to remember. Yeah. So, and actually, I did this, or I think that was in the intro. Mm-hmm. To a large degree, I did it to help set an identity at Morningstar for marketing. Because one thing I noticed here, and I've noticed it in other companies, is you just don't. The voice of marketing is often represented by product or sales or a business unit or something like that. And I thought it was important that we just, back to helping the organization understand, like there's a thing going on here in marketing, and it's important that everyone embraces it. And so the 5 things are actually the same every week based on like kind of what we decide for the year we need to care about. So one is leading to revenue, right? And just talk about how marketing is a driver of revenue, and kind of your point about like, this is the stuff that we do is designed to lead to revenue. And I think this week we talked about a product launch we did last week, right? That's driving a whole bunch of leads. The next one is branded, like just things that are branded and things that impact brand. Because I think the traditional concept of brand has extended so much, right? I mean, brand almost became synonymous with name at one point in time, which is like, oh God, like brand marketers would get chill to hear me say that. I can't remember what I talked about.
Crown jewels.
Yeah, another one we talk about is crown jewels. I do it every week, so it all kind of blends together. But crown jewels, like how we really differentiate ourselves. Gold, like what our goals are, and then another is Tower of Babel, right? Because on Tower of Babel, we just talk about so many, like the language of marketing is exhausting, right? And then you put it with the language of whatever industry you're in, plus the language of all the other functions, it literally does feel like that sort of biblical story where we're all just talking past each other. I think we did one on software language recently, just how, it's like, the software world has made every word have 4 different meanings, and people will talk at each other, and you just don't know what does it mean to migrate something. Is it a product? Is it a solution? Is it all those sorts of things? So I mean that's generally the theme. I really wish I had the memory retention to know exactly what I did. Literally 2 days ago, but
from a consumer and sometimes contributor, longtime caller, first-time participant, or longtime listener, first-time caller. But I think what's also important there is that you solicit information from the entire marketing team. This isn't just, from Rob's tower. This is, okay, what's going on across the organization and how can we bring more visibility to it? So it seems to be very democratized insofar as everyone can have a voice, and you're very good at calling people out and tagging people there. So.
Which is super important for everyone. Wherever you are in your career, you do have to make sure you find a place to share, right? I mean, it is so important, and that your executive management is permitting it, because I mean, the amount of insights that marketers have today that, could be latent in your organization if you're not sharing it is just incredible. It's important to the business that you're sharing. And that's a lot of the intent of that, is to just give a voice, right? And it doesn't even have to come from marketing. I mean, it comes from other folks who are interacting with it and seeing it, because it's like we do want it to be a part of everything.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else in the audience?
Hi, my name is Dakota Schultz. I run a small company called Agency 360 that does a lot of different kinds of marketing and communication. One of the things that you mentioned that I was particularly fascinated on is this idea of filtering and kind of getting through the walls, right? This kind of maze-like analogy to reach who you want to reach. And I'm wondering to what extent partnerships outside of the organization might play into that. Like, who are those other ambassadors of trust that can get you to who you want to be in front of and communicate with?
Yeah.
Whether that's government, charity, other partner companies, how does that play into what's coming in this metaphysical space?
I think you're right on. I think what it represents, and is what this summit is about, is digital innovation, right? It's because, and I would even say, like, our instinct is typically to think, like, how do we get into, in front of the customer, but the whole model is changing to really, how do you get invited? I mean, that is what the rule, and customers are forcing us to redefine our behavior so we are worthy of invitation. There's a super interesting organization we work with here called Impact Shares. It's an investment products nonprofit that they're literally going and building kind of single issue investing products for groups like NAACP. And I'm trying to think another association, so kind of single issue political groups, to build these sustainable investing funds that are just aligned to people's values. It's a completely different channel, a completely different way to bring products to market that anyone in this industry has ever seen. But it gets back to what you're saying. I mean, it's a digitally innovative way of thinking about marketing, because they're thinking about who do we partner with, who shares the same values, the same interests, who's in those filters that we can be invited into their world to think about new ways to solve their problems, to substitute existing things that they buy, to become more relevant. I think it is I think your question kind of defines the future of innovation in digital marketing, because there's no boundary to what we could do except for our own imagination and kind of discovering it first. I think you're onto something. Let's get his card.
Yeah. I think I'm on your email list already.
Umberto Jaimes, I'm with AbbVie, and actually kind of spinning that question a little bit, how do you ensure that you don't filter yourself out of a conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Get his card too.
So I think that we know that we are already, right? I think the first thing is being honest with ourselves, that we are generally filtering ourselves out of out of the discussion, right? That's kind of my example of 5,000 ads and we don't notice most of them. It's also why randomized control trials, really strong ability to split test is so important, so that we are honest with ourselves about failure, right? And nobody wants to fail, right? But it is awkward in the marketing organization to always talk about things like, woo, we got a 2% conversion rate, right? And the rest of the organization is like, that sucks. And you're like, no, that's good, like, for what we're doing. But it is like building a fluency and a comfort with how we're really doing, so that we acknowledge, because nobody says we had a 98% failure rate. It's just not what we do. We're positive people. We're designed to kind of think about like how we want things to be good. But it's really hard to acknowledge that we are already filtering ourselves out. But if we don't confront that, we don't understand that that's also a 98%, of our customers are telling us we got it wrong, we probably shouldn't be burning a lot of resources there and focus on where it's working. authenticity will help that grow, right? I fully believe like the authenticity of, reaching someone, making it work, solving their problems, staying connected, listening, right? Listening is such an important part of everything that marketers do, and we don't even call it a skill, but a lot of these things are, content strategy, digital marketing, they're all just advanced listening techniques to really understand like the good and the bad, right? Listening to the good and the bad and quantifying it. I think we know that we will learn that most of the time we probably do want to filter ourselves out, right? And we'll be much more effective if we focus on the customers who really value what we're doing. It's a great question, though, very, metaphysical.
I think we have time for one more question. And we can probably go on all day, but who wants to ask the final question? Steph, I know you had one.
I have 100.
Pick your favorite.
Oh, geez. I could talk to you all day. So I guess because I saw a couple tweets come through that I thought were interesting, for someone who's really young in their career and just starting out in marketing, whatever part of it, how would you best suggest they strengthen their diversified skill set?
So I had an interesting experience, probably 5 years ago. I was in a startup that Morningstar acquired, and I was going out to hire a digital marketer, and just someone who was gonna, and that same person is here today at Morningstar, and a whole bunch of people came through who were in their late 20s or early 30s. They'd come in with a T-shirt that says, social expert, ask me anything, or they were wildly, they were wildly committed to a particular technology or discipline. Like they'd learned Omniture and they'd been certified across the board, or they had a real passion for Marketo, or they'd really attached themselves. And then this much younger guy, like 3 years out of school, came through who didn't really care about any of the technologies, but was wholly fluent on the experiences that they created for their customers, right? And he came through and it was kind of like, he kind of understood what every technology did, which is sort of important, right? We all have to understand how they work, but they're not, and they're tools that we use, but he really thought of himself more, frankly, as a software developer in marketing, right? Now, he wasn't a software developer. He wasn't he wasn't, particularly fluent in any one technology, but he did think of himself. He understood that all of these technologies that are coming through that are creating opportunities for marketers they're just, they're abstracted computer science tools, right? That's what they are. They're Eloqua, it's if-then statements, concatenation, they're loops and theories. It's all just what you learn in engineering abstracted away for marketers. And so rather than getting obsessed with the technology and obsessed with any specific thing, and I saw this with this friend, he obviously got the job. He was really just focused on how all these technologies were changing the experience and how do you develop those experiences in a way that has business impact for what you were doing. And it was such a contrast. It happened in 5 years from this is a technology thing to now this is new business, right? This is the new way to do business. Digital innovation is how we're doing it. And I think if you're young in your career and you just have that mindset, just always focus on the customer authenticity, what the experience you're driving, how do you monetize it, you will be wildly successful, at whatever you want, whether you want to stay in marketing, whether you want to be a general manager, whether you want to be do all kinds of roles across the board. That customer insight, it is, and just the understanding all the different technologies, how they come together in a general way. It's a 15 to 50-year roadmap for career success, but you don't want to get too distracted by the technologies and more focus on that customer experience.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Thank you for
Great.
joining us both. Thank
you. Yeah,
appreciate your time. Love the Q&A.